It's just not as fun, you know. So we found this big piece. We have a huge house brother here, huge counter, and we have. Our kitchen is right here in the equipment, so we have. It was photographed for a magazine and stuff like that. So we have a lot. We did where he does the yeah, that's cool. He said that kitchen. You know, I've never been there, but I've seen pictures. It looks really beautiful.
I mean, it's totally stacked.
Yeah, it looks really beautiful.
In the island, we did something with a production pizza.
Wow.
Which you can then couple with a wooden chopping block.
Right.
Present from the island.
Right.
Work from the 36 ranges.
Yeah, I saw he had a lot. He had a lot also. I thought that I only saw it. Hey. Yeah. Let's do it. We know each other like what? A long time. It's like 25 years.
At least 25 years. Because Jimmy was a baby, and my husband was bringing him to gymnastics when they were building Angelica.
That's crazy.
And as soon as you opened, we came in, and then we came in like 3 times a week for years.
My wife is going to be freaking out.
Yeah, and you know, I got that magazine with the picture of you and the kids.
No way.
And her. And I'm thinking, where's the Michael? Where's the other guy? I was like, there's nobody hanging out and the kids.
It's so weird because, you know, they did this whole big, like, photo shoot. They were there for a day. And, you know, those are magazines.
You never know what they're going to put and what they're not going to put.
My wife
and I'm looking, where's the write-up? You know, and then it's just those bunch of recipes. I was like, I don't need these recipes. I want to hear about it.
That's so weird.
Anyway, I was hoping she might be here, but then I figured, no, you do something.
Yeah. That's what exactly
Saying, all right, Michael, see you tonight.
She's home with the kids. That's
Yeah,
what
I'm sure she is.
Yeah. Football and basketball all the time.
Soccer and this
It
and
never ends. I don't know how they do it all.
it's amazing.
How you doing? How's everything? I've been there, yes, I've been there. Twice. Been there twice. My pleasure, my pleasure. Oh, really? Beautiful. Oh, thank you.
That's good. Now, this is my
There we go. Where we're looking. At the green. At the camera. At the real camera. All right. Great. Thank you.
All right, we got plates.
So if you guys want to have a little snack while everybody's coming in, there's a line there. This is Greek yogurt. You'll be surprised what real Greek yogurt tastes like once you taste it. And this is just some, this is really mezet, you know, so it's just a little bit of chickpea. This is tzatziki or yogurt sauce. These are some grape leaves with rice, some pulpita, and this is a Cypriot salad. Bulgur wheat as a base with a lot of vegetables and some pomegranates, nuts, super, everything here is like crazy healthy for you. Tastes very good. It's a big part of that book, and we're going to be talking about that. So if you want to grab something, and then we could have a seat, we could start. It's up to you guys whenever you're ready. Ask any questions while we're going on. So we have like we have so many stories from the design part of the house because we were going to all these places to find very specific things. So one of the things that we had to find, we have in the back of the house, we have a big, huge open space, and it's open to the ceilings. It's 35 feet from the floor to the ceiling. And there's a big second set of staircase that goes up to the second floor, and then there's a big balcony that you can look over, and the whole thing is windows. But to the left, there's this huge fireplace. So it spans 12 feet wide, and it goes from the floor all the way to the ceiling. It's all stone. And we needed a mantle for it, but like it's so massive that everything we put up there looked like it was way too small. Right? Like to find a mirror for it was ridiculous. We couldn't find it because you needed a mirror that was like 18 feet. It was ridiculous, you know? Everything we put up there looked so tiny. So we went all the way upstate New York, and we found this farm that had all of this reclaimed wood. It's just wood that's just been sitting out there outside for years and years and years.
Big beams.
Big, huge old beams.
Yeah, to make a custom mantle.
And we just picked one. So we picked one, and then they put it in a truck, and they brought it to Brooklyn, and we had these two guys sort of just get it all ready, and then we had to put it up. And then putting up, we had to put this like it was such a project. Everything just seemed like such a project for this fireplace because it was so heavy. The beam was over 500 pounds. So we had to put steel. We put a steel like almost like right steel on the stone, and then they cut the beam from the inside, mounted a female, so it was like this. I don't know how they did it. It's crazy. Hey, how's it going? Good. What time? 6:30. I'm actually on time. It's unbelievable.
Yes.
Crazy. Oh my gosh, we're like last minute. Thanks. Oh my God, that's right. Yes, she's great. Jesus. Wow. That's the second glass with the pass. That's awesome.
How are you? How's everything else? Yeah.
All right. I'm online. That's it.
That's cool.
Want a glass of wine? Want a glass of wine?
No. Thank you.
Seriously, what's your
Elena. Elena. Talk to Elena.
It's really very, when you try it, it's so different. So that one there has got a little bit of goat cow sheep in it. Nope. It's got a very tart flavor. You'll see when you taste it. Right there. That's like it's kind of like a hummus with sun-dried tomato and some peppers. Yeah.
Is that what you serve at the MP Taverna?
We serve all this in one way or another.
He's got a pumpkin seeds, cranberry. Yeah.
Oh, in Brooklyn, yeah?
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. It's hard to get it off. You can eat it or do your tiles with it for you.
I love you so much.
Oh, thank you. From pictures, yeah.
Yes. Not pictures.
TV. Oh, yeah.
I'm glad that you can do it.
Thank you. That's nice to hear.
Yeah.
We try to be great. Sometimes we are. Sometimes. It's hard to be great. Do you know that? It's very hard to be great. You have
To stay
dedicate
great.
a lot.
To stay great
Yeah,
too.
it's a lot of time. A lot of focus. I tell people all the time that to be good is not to be great is hard.
And then here,
All
they put in a
like
question.
Of course. It's live. That's it. It's the real thing. That's it. Have to.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's just Greek yogurt. Authentic Greek yogurt. I think part of it is just ingredient. We'll talk a lot about that. You know, the Mediterranean diet specifically, they get quality ingredients. You don't have to. Like when you look at this yogurt, you know, where are you getting it? It's hard to find.
Yeah. All right. Let's go. It's the best. Red either red pasta sugar got it boom, and you want to think it's gonna.
How was everything? Good?
We have wine.
It's delicious. We went there.
Broken in English. No. Did I actually do that? Oyster base on long. From New Zealand, can't get it. Love it. Acidic and bright, beautiful, delicious.
So I think, ladies, gentlemen,
Yeah.
just to say thanks for joining us this evening. I'd like to welcome you to our showroom, Steaks and Crops showroom. We're lucky to live here through the State Agent's offices in Cold Spring Harbour. And special welcome to our special guest tonight. He's an author, restaurateur, TV celebrity.
Renaissance man.
That's
Yeah, there you go.
You know him. I'm going to hand over to
Unless you ask
Michael.
my wife, then she has others.
Michael Psilakis. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. So, thanks for coming, everybody. I mean, we're here tonight really to talk about this beautiful showroom, the beautiful cabinetry that these people are actually making, which is fantastic. And Mediterranean food. I have a cookbook. This is my second cookbook. The first one that I wrote was so different than this one because it was really a homage to my dad, who had passed away at the time. And I was so grief-stricken when he passed away. He was really my hero. And when he passed away, the thing that I loved most to do, which is cook, became so insignificant. It really just meant nothing to me. From everything to nothing in just a moment. It just got all taken away. Because this guy who meant everything to me wasn't here anymore. And, I was doing a lot of soul searching during the days after his passing. And I started doing a lot of writing and thinking, and what I realized was that he was using food as a vehicle to teach me a lot of lessons about life. And my mom, who's just one of those like old-fashioned housewives, they don't really exist much anymore, but she took care of kids and took care of the home. And she used food to gather us together every night at the dinner table. It was just a vehicle to bring us together, And anybody who came from that sort of really old school family realized that person that was cooking the food was their gift to the people that they were cooking it for, And I realized that food at that moment was really this gift. It wasn't about me cooking the food that made me excited. It was about me giving the food to the people that I was cooking it for that made me excited. And then I realized that it was the memories of the food that we were eating that made it all special. And then I realized that it wasn't really about the food at all. It was just about the memories that we were creating. The food was just a vessel to create the memories, right? So I spent the better part of the first 20 years of my life cooking on a critical level, thinking that food was art. And then my father passed away, and I was like, oh my God, this is all wrong. Food's not art. It's not about art. It's just about family. It's about bringing people together. It's about creating relationships with people that you love and using food as a vehicle to bring all these people together. And the memories just kind of happen, If you make food, people come. It's crazy, You make food, and all of a sudden you have a full house, So we built a house. I was telling the guys, we built a house. I live in Garden City. We built this house, my wife and I. And the whole time we were designing it, all we kept saying is we want this to be the house that all the kids want to come to. I don't care about anything else. Like, we just want this to be the house that everybody says, let's go to that house. We want 30 people every day at the house, right? Let's build a kitchen, let's build a room, let's build whatever it is. And so that's what we did. And everybody's at the house every single day. And that's what we wanted, and that's who we are, and that's how we extend ourselves to the people that we love and that are in the community and that we want to bring into our home. But we have, beautiful things in the house, but everybody always is revolving around the kitchen area. Right? We have a huge space and this big room, and then we have this big open kitchen, and it's just this one big massive area, and nobody wants to go anywhere else. They just want to hang out over there. So there's somebody cooking, there's refrigerators, and they're filled with different kind of cool things, and kids know that they can go into cupboards and just grab stuff, and it makes the home welcoming to everybody, So the second book really has that identity. It's really about cooking at home and creating easy, simple food for the people that you love. And the idea behind a book is that if you follow the program that it offers you, which is I want you to make 7 different main principal condiments/ingredients and have them in your refrigerator. If you have those 7 things, you can make anything in this book in 15 minutes at the house, which is really cool, right? But you have to make or have those 7 things. So the way it works is you have tzatziki, one of the things that you ate, and that was that yogurt sauce on this mezet platter. So tzatziki is just this yogurt with garlic and vinegar and cucumber and dill, right? So you take good Greek yogurt, and I wanted you to understand what Greek yogurt is. I mean, did you see how thick and how rich and how different it really tastes? It's not Dannon, right? You can't make good tzatziki with Dannon yogurt, unfortunately. It just doesn't do it. It's filled with water. It's just filled with liquid. That's why it's all watery and soupy when you get it. So Greek yogurt, the big difference between Greek yogurt and any kind of other yogurt that's on the market is that we strain it. So it actually sits kind of like in a cheesecloth, and all the water comes out of it, and what's left is this really thick, rich, intensely flavored product. So anytime you remove water from anything, anytime you remove water from anything, you're intensifying the flavor. That's why dry aged beef, if you like that funky, earthy, beefy flavor, that's why it tastes so meaty, because they're letting it age, and as it ages, the liquid in the actual beef itself evaporates into the air, and it intensifies the flavor. It's just like making a sauce in the kitchen. If you take this much red wine and you reduce it to this much, you only need a drop. Because all that fruit and all that flavors get concentrated and concentrated and concentrated. That's what happens when you take liquid out of anything, right? So the book teaches you all that in a very simple way. So it takes the yogurt, it makes it into tzatziki, and it says to you, if you have this tzatziki, then you can make a really simple tuna melt using tzatziki instead of mayonnaise. And all of a sudden you're taking something that is going to add that garlic and that vinegar and the cucumber and the dill into this simple, open face tuna melt. And you're thinking, how is that going to taste? And I'm telling you, it's going to taste great. and you're shocked when you can take these little tiny things and really use them in so many different ways to open up doors that you never thought could happen, and make it happen really quickly. So you ask, how did this come about? And it came about because on Sundays when I have off, and I'm with my family all day, it's the one day that I have off, I'm at the house, and guess what I'm doing? Cooking, because that's what I do. That's all I know how to do. My wife says I'm one-dimensional. So and she knows me for 25 years. I'm still always at the restaurant. I'm always at the restaurant. So as Ashley knows, I'm always at a restaurant somewhere. So now we just have more than one. So on Sundays, I would cook for us, but I would also always cook extra stuff. But I wouldn't cook extra stuff in the way that you would think. I wouldn't make a lasagna and just leave it in the refrigerator and say, or in the freezer and say, okay, you have a lasagna ready. I would say to her, I'm going to blanch and chop vegetables. What does that mean? I would put a pot of water up, and I would make it boil. I would season it with a little bit of salt, and then I would take broccoli and put it in the water, let it cook, and when it was just ready, I would take it out and put it in ice water. And that would stop the cooking, right? And then we had these little, I love the XO containers. You guys ever have those? The little pop. They have that little thing, you push on it and it pops up, right? Like I'm freaky about those. But they also look really nice in the refrigerator. I have a picture of my refrigerator.
I saw that.
It's so cool. I have to show you. It's just, if you see it, you're gonna be like, no way. So it's really like,
I love
this is
the
my
thing to keep your
refrigerator.
eggs in.
Come on.
Wow.
So one-dimensional.
So I'm anal when it comes to this stuff. So ADD, whatever you want to call it, but obsessive compulsive. But what really makes it great is that we have all of these things that are ready, right? So the broccoli's cooked. It's ready. The string beans are cooked. They're ready, right? The broccoli is cooked. It's ready. So how easy is it then if you're coming home and you're saying, wow, I want to make broccoli with, some sweet chicken sausage or some pork sausage with broccoli, garlic and oil. All it's going to take you, if the broccoli is already cooked and blanched and shock, is going to take you the time that it takes you to cook the pasta. That's it. The time that it's going to take you to cook the pasta, that's it, right? And then another one of the ingredients is just peppers and onions that are cooked together and a little bit of tomato, right? And you think, like, well, what am I going to do with that? Well, if you have some turkey meat and you throw some of this ragu of peppers, onions, and tomato that are sauteed together, all of a sudden you're making a taco mix. But it happens instantly because the chopped turkey takes maybe 10 minutes to cook, right? So if you look at the book, the way it's organized, it starts with Greek yogurt, right? So it says, here's your Greek yogurt chapter. These are all the different kind of things you can make with Greek yogurt. So it starts with, this is just plain Greek yogurt, right? So with plain Greek yogurt, nothing added to it whatsoever, you could have this really great, this is one of my wife's favorite sandwiches, just smoked salmon with Greek yogurt on a whole grain muffin, right? Some arugula and some shaved onions and some shaved tomato, a little bit of lemon. We put olive oil and dill on everything in my house, but it is what it is. And now you have a really simple sandwich, right? You didn't cook anything. We toasted the muffin. Right? But if you're having a brunch party, or if you're making little tiny canapes for a cocktail party at your house, this is so cool, right? And people think, oh my God, it took you forever to make, but you didn't cook anything. You bought some really nice salmon, and you toasted some English muffin. That's what you did. But then you gave them this, and they're like, what? This is little parfait, so the kids love this. I have all this stuff kind of just hanging around. So this one here is actually what you guys are having. It's just yogurt with seeds, hemp, chia, sunflower, safflower, pumpkin seeds. These are all superfoods, like really, really, really good for you. But it doesn't taste that way. It just tastes crunchy, you know? The sweetness is from the honey instead of sugar. So it's trying to remove sugar and just kind of keep whatever you can. This is my youngest favorite. It's just citrus salad. It's just segment all different types of citrus, and we just marinate it in a little bit of honey and some fresh thyme, and that's it. And in the morning you just make yogurt. So like these are just simple things that you can make a parfait with roasted strawberries. It seems like so difficult, but once you have them in the refrigerator, you're shocked at how many different things you can do with it. You know, it really is. So then we add a little bit of garlic and a little bit of vinegar to it, and now we have some beets. So it has a recipe for beets, but you can buy really great beets now. You know, you can go to Whole Foods and buy really fantastic beets, right? So now I have this really simple garlic vinegar yogurt. We have some beets. So you're gonna make this really cool beet salad with pink grapefruit and string beans and some radishes and some red onions, right? Again, the string beans are cooked because on Sunday you're going to the supermarket, you're putting up that water, like I said, and it's boiling. And you can have string beans and carrots and all this really good vegetables just sitting there in the soak container like my refrigerator. And then this salad, you can make it in 5 minutes. You know, so, and that's how it is. So now we're gonna add some cucumber to that vinegar and garlic yogurt. And all of a sudden you have tzatziki. So you have a really great crudité, right? Instead of sour cream for the chips or the tortillas for the kids, you're just putting out tzatziki. Literally, that's what we do. You know, so I was at home this afternoon. I was on a conference call with the computer, whatever that's called. I forgot what it's called. Yeah, Skype. Yeah, whatever. So, and I just wanted to be quiet. So like a fool, I went home because I thought it was going to be quiet there. So, you know, the kids came and then everybody was running around the house and yelling and screaming. I had to tell them to go downstairs. They didn't want to stay there because I was home. It was a mess. But anyway, they were like, we want to eat that. So, you know, I just went in there and I got some tzatziki and we got some tortilla chips. And, you know, Tostitos and tzatziki, like literally it's hysterical. All these kids were sitting there. It's funny because I don't know if you know Garden City, it could be more waspy. It's like Irish Catholic, everybody. You know? We're dark in Garden City, it's crazy. And like, they come to my house and they don't want to eat, and then I'm like, just taste
Try
it.
it.
Just try it. It's a big rule in our house. You have to try it.
Every
you know?
chef says that.
And like, you know, they eat it and then they come over and they're like, Mr. Psilakis, can we have that white stuff again? Or, you know, lamb chops, like lamb chops, you know? Like lamb, try it. Oh, that's the tuna melt that I was telling you about. This is all in the yogurt chapter. There's a turkey burger with yogurt on it, you know? So the thing about it to me is that when you look at the cookbook, right, here's that pepper and onion thing that I was telling you about. So this is one of my favorite condiments. It's the tzatziki sauce, but we added chipotle to it, so it's a little spicy. It's really, really good. Yeah. It's smoky and it's spicy. This is one of the other ingredients. Just roasted cherry tomatoes. You'd be shocked, like if you have just these little roasted cherry tomatoes, they're just cherry tomatoes with garlic oil and olive oil and a little bit of oregano, and they're just roasted in the oven, and then we just leave them in this container. I tell you, I love these containers, right? Well,
Are you selling those
I don't, but I should. I should get folks.
Start 'em
They
all.
need to pay me for something. So, you know, you can make this bronzino if you have those cherry tomatoes. This is one of our, like, we sell so many of this dish at the restaurants. It's insane, you know. This is grilled branzino with cherry tomatoes and olives mixed with a little bit of garlic. You know, and then lemon and extra virgin olive oil on top. Yeah, and again, it's so simple. It's nice. I have a grill inside, so it's a lot easier for us because we just grill all year long. I love grilling. You know, I love it. So we're lucky. I was telling everybody earlier that Viking gave me all the equipment for the house, so I have all this really beautiful stuff. You know, we have a plancha, like a big thing, so we make pancakes in the morning. I'm like a short order cook. What do you want? Everybody tells me what they want. No exaggeration.
In the blood.
Yeah. So my little boy today wanted pancakes with inside the pancakes wants a sandwich with peanut butter and jelly. That's what he ate for breakfast. Pancakes with peanut butter and jelly. The other one's a little bit more sophisticated, but this is like that. I want pancakes with peanut butter and jelly. So it's spaghetti with roasted tomatoes. You know? I mean, it's just so crazy because this is an egg white omelet with roasted tomatoes. The thing is, if you have the roasted tomatoes, this stuff is really simple, right? Because the egg white comes in a carton. It just comes in a carton. You don't have to do anything, you know what I mean? Like literally, no joke, you know? This is the funny story in my house because I dump everything into egg white omelets. Like, I open up the refrigerator and whatever's in there is like the garbage stuff. Broccoli, there's pasta in there sometimes, anything that I have in the refrigerator, you know? But it tastes good. Egg and anything tastes good, I'm telling you. So we have, I usually don't take it out of this because I use a cast iron skillet and we kind of cook it like a frittata. So what happens is when you use a cast iron skillet, it keeps it hot, right? Because eggs go cold really quickly. It also keeps the souffle of the egg white or whatever the omelet that you're making. It just keeps it nice and like fluffy. You just have to be careful because you're starting it on the top and then you're transferring it into the oven and then you're taking it out of the oven and you're serving it in that thing, which makes it, you know, it makes it great. So then you're taking those same cherry tomatoes and you're putting them in a blender to make this pesto. This pesto really is very good, I have to say. Like this is just shrimp that are roasted in the oven, just broiled shrimp, and then you put this pesto on top. The pesto is made by taking the roasted cherry tomatoes with smoked almonds, a little bit of raw garlic, and some red wine vinegar and fresh herbs. That's it. But it has so much flavor to it, you know, that you'd be surprised the end result, how delicious it really, really is. So this is just grilled chicken breast with some roasted peppers and some grilled zucchini with that pesto on top of it. Like, who doesn't want to eat that, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's so good. Some steak with the pesto, you know. So this is my favorite, though. This is why I really want to get to this one. So garlic confit, if there's one thing that, you know, you can look, so many of my recipes are online. If you Google my name, it's like pages of stuff, and then you'll find recipes. This is one of the recipes that every time somebody says, what's the one recipe? The one recipe that you have to have, right? It's this one. It's the most simple thing in the whole world. It's garlic. I must have a picture of it. So this is the garlic confit. So it's garlic peeled, right? You can buy peeled garlic, right? Don't peel the garlic, just buy it peeled, because you're gonna need a lot of it, right? And then you put it in a casserole or you put it in a pan with oil, and then you can put whatever you want. I have bay leaves in here. The recipe calls for whatever, but you know, for me, it's like whatever you like, whatever the flavors are. Okay. The process of cooking this is called confit. Confit, maybe you've heard duck confit, right? So confit is really the process in which it's cooked. So the duck is being cooked very slowly in its own fat. And really, this was a method that they used before refrigeration to preserve food, right? So my dad would tell me stories about the village in Crete where they would take the animals and they would cook them slow, and they would leave them in the fat. And then what would happen is the meat would be submerged in the fat, and as it cooled, the fat would rise to the top. So there would be liquid in the bottom, the meat would be sitting there, and then the fat would rise up to the top, and then the fat would get hard, right? It seals it off. Isn't that crazy? So before they had refrigeration, and they would poke a hole in the fat, and they would go and get some meat, and it would keep it fresh for a little bit longer, you know? So confit takes it a step further because it keeps it in oil, and it keeps it in oil for a long, long time, really long time. But what we do is we cook it in oil really slow, and what happens is that it starts to caramelize. So everything, including ourselves, has sugar in it, right? So when you start to caramelize something, you're taking the sugar and you're making it brown, effectively, right? So now you're taking the natural sugar in the garlic and you're caramelizing it. So what's going to happen? It's going to make it sweet, right? So now you have this sweet garlic. This is like roasted garlic. Have you ever had roasted garlic? Right? Remember Kefi and FISHTAG?
Oh yeah,
My
the whole
first
head.
restaurant.
The whole
Right?
head.
A whole head of garlic. 25
Spread it
years
on
ago.
bread.
Yeah.
That's
And
why
we used
you
to
went
serve it
there.
with fresh home focaccia bread and
Yeah.
yeah.
You didn't
And we-
need to serve anything else.
Yeah. So we would give it away. Can you believe that? God, I was
We
stupid.
loved
I was like
it.
really stupid at those. Free.
2 or 3 times a week. We loved it.
Yeah.
So this is the same idea, but what happens is you're cooking it slow in this oil, right? And then we take it out of the oil and we put it in a food processor and puree it. Okay? So now what happens is you have this beautiful oil, which is flavored with garlic. That's garlic oil. Right? So if you want to make a garlic vinaigrette, that's the oil that you would use. Right? It's really, really simple. So if you want to make a lemon garlic vinaigrette, you use this oil. If you want to make a lemon, garlic, black peppercorn vinaigrette. Right? It sounds so fancy, but it's just this oil that tastes like garlic with a vinegar and lemon, right? That's it. So it's going to taste good on a fish. So this is the puree. So now once you make this puree, it stays in some sort of sealed container. It'll stay for a few weeks as long as you don't, go in there and double dip. Right? So if you're putting a spoon in there, and then you're taking the spoon and you're mixing the tomato sauce with it, and then you're like, oh, I need more, and you're putting it in there, and then you put it, it's no good, no good. That's no good. And what's really bad, and my wife does this all the time, she takes it out of the refrigerator and she puts it on the counter. And she leaves it on the counter for an hour while she's cooking. She's done, put it away in the refrigerator. Why do you want to keep
So
it
now
out
we
here?
know the things you
Right?
fight over.
Yeah. It's 70 degrees outside, right? It's 35 degrees in there, right? That's where we want to keep it. So as long as you're taking care of it, it's going to stay for a very long time. But what this little scoop of garlic in any pan sauce does is really extraordinary. Because it'll take a little bit of chicken stock to that same broccoli with sausage that you were making, right? And it'll add viscosity, like it thickens the sauce, it adds garlic flavor to it, it really adds so much depth of flavor. Because every bite is going to have a little bit of that bay leaf, or that thyme, or that juniper. It's in there, right? It's in there, and it's going to be in that sauce. And you're not going to even know. They're not going to know. People are not going to know. Like bay leaf, what does bay leaf taste like? You can't imagine what bay leaf does for things. Bay leaf is really an important little tiny leaf. And if you get fresh bay leaf, as opposed to the ones that are dried in the jar, it's totally different. Totally different. If you put in a little bit of like chicken soup, you're gonna be like, what is that? At Kefi and FISHTAG, I used to put cinnamon stick in bolognese because I was Greek, right? So I couldn't make a bolognese like an Italian because it would be wrong, or at least my mother would say it was wrong. And we would put cinnamon, people would say, what is that flavor? And I would say cinnamon, they'd be like, nah. I would say cinnamon. Why would you put cinnamon? 25 years ago, to think that you were putting cinnamon in a savory dish was not something that Americans were ready for. They couldn't, mentally, they just couldn't digest it. It was supposed to be on apple pie. Why would you put it in a sauce? So that's what this book really is. It's just trying to make things simple, right? This is just a lemon vinaigrette. Lemon, extra virgin olive oil, and oregano. That's it. And, it just tells you what can you do with it, right? What can you do with it? And it just goes through, this is a tomato sauce. So there's 7 different main ingredients. And if you have all 7, then you can do anything in the book. It's really kind of cool, right? So that in a nutshell is the book. The food is based on the Mediterranean diet. So I struggled, so this is personal stuff with me. This book was written because I struggle with food like you can't imagine. Because to me, food's an addiction. You know, it could be heroin. It's the same. I can't stop. I really can't. I've gained and lost hundreds of pounds in my life because of this thing called food. It's crazy. And, you know, I've realized over the years that when I'm happy, I'm eating. When I'm sad, I'm eating. When I'm stressed out, I'm eating. Like, it's crazy, right? And it's my mother's fault, and I'm telling her. It's just how it is. Because it's true. So I'm trying to tell, like, you know, it's the crazy thing, like, you gotta finish your plate. You don't really have to finish your plate if you're full. Don't finish it, you know? But it's okay, anyway. She's a great woman. I tell my wife all the time that if you ask my mother to cut both of her hands off so that one of her children can experience a moment of joy, she would just say, "Yeah, I had to do it." It's just my mother, you know? But it comes at a price. Believe me, it comes at a price. Oh my God. She never lets you forget it. But she's a great woman. So, she's just so funny. It's funny. But what were we talking about? I just forgot. Food.
Mediterranean diet. And your
My
struggle
addiction to
with
food.
eating.
My addiction to food. So we in my house, we try and create better habits than what I have myself. So here's a guy who's addicted to this thing, and what do? I'm in it all day long, every day, right? So like it's like the crackhead, like working in a crack den, right? It's like really what it is, right? It's just my drug of choice is always available for me, you know? So I'm constantly struggling against it. And the reason for it is because I developed bad habits from young, you know? So food is not meant to be used the way that we use it today in society. It's really meant to be used the way my mother used it growing up, which is just to bring people together and then to keep us alive, right? Today, we're using it because corporate America came into the game a little bit and started saying, hey, we can make money on this thing, right? We can make a lot of money on this thing. And all of a sudden, marketing came about, right? And it's really crazy to me that here in the United States, Europe is different because Europeans, they think about food in a totally different way than Americans think about food. But in Europe, if you call something extra virgin olive oil, it means that it's first press, cold press, right? It has to be. There's a law that defines what DOP is or what GC is. It depends on where you're coming from, right? So in Greece, if you're calling something extra virgin olive oil, it has to be first press, cold press. In Italy, if you're calling something extra virgin olive oil, it has to be first press, cold press. So in the United States, there's something called extra virgin light olive oil. Extra virgin light olive oil. It's got to be good for you, right? Because it's light. It's got to be good for you, right? But what happens, it's not about the flavor, and that's the thing, or about the calories. What they're doing is they're heating the oil. So after they take the first press, which is really extra virgin, right? It's even beyond the pumice. You're going beyond pumice. You're going to the bottom of the barrel, right? They're heating it. They're pushing every last drop out, right? It's dripping out. They're putting it in a bottle, and they call it extra virgin light olive oil, and you got to pay $3 more for that. So all the natural, healthy ingredients are destroyed during that process. And yet, we're able to sell it and to mislead the public on that, you know? And that's the thing about, you know, what we are as a society here in the United States. We're not yet at the level where we're really concerned with the actual process of what's going on. We're concerned with what we see in the face value. It's just who we are, right? And no one's worse than that than us here in New York. It's, you know, it's all about, you know, what we have, right? And what we can show the other people of what we have, you know? So for me, the cookbook is trying to get myself on the right path and hopefully taking people who are like myself or who are better than I am and really structure a mechanism that allows them to do the thing that's so complicated for many of us, which is to organize our time, right? Time has really become, think about it, the most precious commodity that we have. It's so hard to find the time to do all these things that we want to do, you know? And cooking kind of gets pushed all the way back to the burner because there's so many other options, you know? There's so many other options. So you know what we do at my house, because I'm always working, breakfast becomes the dinner in my house, right? So in the morning, I get up early, I play with the kids, I have 2 boys, I play with them, then we do some homework together, right? Like everything you guys do at dinner time, I'm doing in the morning because I'm not there at dinner time, I'm working. Then we have breakfast, we sit down as a family to eat breakfast, and then the kids go to school, and then I go to work, and then I don't see them again. My little one knows how to nudge me, and he really kills me every day. He's like, I'll see you tomorrow, Dad. Right? He knows that. He knows that it bothers me, so he does it intentionally.
So sweet.
Yeah, he got that. No, he got that from me. He got that from me. I was wise. But not that you can tell.
No.
But
Not at all.
but he, you know, he at least we're able to spend that time together, and I'm convinced that when I'm gone, they're gonna remember that time, right? It's gonna be an important thing. It might not be necessarily important today, this moment, but it will be sometime in the future, you know?
They'll be writing a book too.
Maybe they will. So in my first book, and this is why to me food is so important. My first book, there was a story. Every chapter in the first book has prose, a short story, about like 3,000 to 5,000 word essays, if you want to call it something. And they're all stories that revolved around me and my dad together. So my dad and I did everything together. We fished together, we hunt together, we did everything together. Everything outside. So one of the stories was right after he passed away. We were celebrating Easter at my mother's house. It was the first Easter that we were apart from one another. And we were roasting a lamb on a spit in the backyard. So we had like every Easter we would have like maybe 30 or 40 people, not a lot, like 30, 40 people.
That's it.
And from my house, forget it, you don't know. So we would have just like small group of people, and we would put a lamb or 2 on the spit in the backyard. So my father had built this barbecue out of brick. It's in the book. They took a picture of it, right? It's a brick with a roof on it, and we would spit roast an animal, right? So in those days, I grew up in a town called East Northwood on Long Island. Those days, people didn't know about spit roasting, you know. So the first time we did it, they called the police because they thought we were roasting a dog. Because we were Greek, we were crazy. So the police came. It's a true story. The police came. They're like, "What are you guys doing?" We're like, "It's a lamb." They're like, "A lamb? It's a lamb." They didn't know what it is. So funny. So fast forward like 30 years from that time, we're cooking a lamb. My oldest son was 3 years old at the time, and my brother and I were putting a lamb on the spit. And this year we only had there was about maybe 18 people there, because my father had literally just passed away a month before. And my son is outside, and we're putting this lamb on a spit. We're ready to put it on the fire, so we're getting ready to season it. So my dad, when I was a kid, taught me we would get the lamb and we would put it in the garage, and we would hang. This is how ghetto we would hang it there, you know, on a string, so it would dry out, and it would taste more gamey. So I did what my dad showed me how to do, and we're there, and now we're putting the salt on it. But when you dry it out, the salt doesn't stick because it's literally dry, really, really dry, the animal. So we would put water. My dad would pour water in my hands, and I would rub the animal down, and I put salt. And that was my job when I was little, like my son, because I couldn't really help him, but I wanted to be involved. So that was my job, right? It became the thing. So now my son was there, and I said, okay, Gabriel, come over here. And he came to me, and I grabbed this bottle of water, and I started pouring the water in his hand. So, he's cupping his hands like this, and I'm pouring water in his hands, and the water's hitting his hands, and it's like splashing him, it's splashing me, and he's laughing. You know, he's happy. You know, and I'm looking at him, and I'm really sad because I'm thinking, you're never gonna know your grandfather, and this couldn't be worse situation for me, and it's very surreal, and I'm watching the water in his hands, and then all of a sudden I had this deja vu, this like epiphany, this moment where it was like I was looking at my hands when I was a kid. I felt like it was all of a sudden I was just standing there watching my father pour water into my hands and watching the water hit my hands. And I remember how happy I was. And I'm looking at this kid and he's happy. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, you know what? I made my father proud just being there at 3 years old. And that brought me peace. And it was food. It was food that did all of that, And that's why it wasn't art anymore. So I had all of these restaurants and I had all of these accolades, and I said, I don't need that anymore. What I need is to know what my son's name is, because all I was doing was cooking in those days. And it was great that I got to cook for the president, I got to cook for the queen, I've cooked for so many different people in my life. It's unbelievable, it's really unbelievable, And I remember people asked me, because I cooked for President Obama the first term that he was there, and when they talked to me about like what was it like, I don't really remember, because it wasn't impressive to me that I was cooking for the president. But you know what I remember? I went to the China room. When you go to the China room of the White House, you pick the china, but you're picking the china. It's like this is the Lincoln china. President Lincoln ate off this china. This is the Washington china. George Washington ate off of this china. It's pretty remarkable, And everyone, including the Obamas, the first lady for forever would pick up china, and they saved it, and it's there as part of our history, So you get to pick where you're gonna plate the food, To me, that was cool, because in all honesty, I don't know President Obama. I could say he's a good guy, but I don't really know him. I knew my dad. I could tell you he was a great man, So, I remember years ago somebody asked me who was my hero, and I said, I really don't have a hero. And I had a girlfriend at the time. She turned around and said, who are you kidding? It's your dad. And it wasn't until she said it that I really recognized him as a hero, because it didn't dawn on me, But to me, the life that I led, and the reason why I'm here today, which is ironic, is because of all the times that we spent in the backyard roasting an animal, right? And cooking together. He wasn't teaching me necessarily how to cook an animal. He was teaching me lessons about life. I just didn't get it at the time. Later on, I did. That's why I'm saying, if you take the time today to try and put these things together, it's so hard. It really is so hard. Take it from me. Like, time is so precious to me. It really, really is. But if you can find the moments, it doesn't have to be every day. You don't have to necessarily make a huge meal. At my house, we never sit down and say, even at my mother's house, it's never a 3-course meal, 8-course meal, 12-course. We never do that. We put everything in the middle of the table and we eat, Everything in the middle of the table and we eat. Big bowls of stuff and an empty plate in front of you. You know what I mean? And that's it. And then we eat, And for me, that's really the joy of being able to sit down and why hire these guys to make this beautiful cabinets, or buy a home from the people that have this beautiful real estate shop, if you're not going to make it something that's going to have memories in it, And the simplest thing to use to create those memories is food. It really is, because you have to do it anyway. You know what I'm saying? That's the thing. The difference is, and you can still do it in a restaurant, you can still buy the food and bring it home as long as you're sitting together. I don't really care. But the thing that's interesting about becoming intimate with the food is that you start to realize how beautiful it is to give that gift and how much joy you get from giving. It's like true chefs, great chefs. You don't have to know anything. I could teach you how to make things that you would be shocked that you would know. in a day. You know what I mean? I could teach you how to make the most complicated thing in 2 or 3 days. Most complicated thing, you know? Very, very, very high-end cooking. To learn something is not a complicated thing. It really, really, really isn't. In my opinion, you can teach anybody how to do something, but you can't teach them how to care. I've tried. You can't teach the guy who just naturally has ability to be great, to care enough to actually be great. Right? Some people have it in them to be great, and they just don't use it. You know, they don't use it because they don't care enough to use it. And that's okay, you know? Like, my brother is the youngest in my family. He's a genius, really smart kid, like certified genius, right? But he had a learning disability that wasn't recognized until he was in the 11th grade, called dysgraphia. He can't write. So if you ask him to write, it's like he's writing as if he was a child, but he's a genius. So think about this poor kid, right? His mind is working like an Einstein, but he can't write, so everybody thinks he's stupid. Right? So he's in remedial classes with people who can't, you know, do things that he's, and I remember, like, as a child, he would take apart radios and then put them back together, you know, like 7 years old. He's taking apart radios and connecting them with different things, and they would still work. And I would say to Mom, it's not normal, you know, that this kid is doing that. You know, it's not normal. Like, you shouldn't be able to put an engine together at 7 years old, you know? But he couldn't write a word. He couldn't write a word, a sentence. He could. It's just crazy. Dyslexic. They couldn't figure it out. Then he gets to the 11th grade, and they figured out what he had, and you know, he went to a technical school. He became a chemical engineer, and you know what he does now? He takes care of his 2-year-old daughter. He's a stay-at-home dad. So my mom can't deal with that. Because she's an immigrant Greek woman who sacrificed her whole life so that her kids could become educated and be better than her. That's why. And in her mind, it's not enough for him, because he's a genius, to watch a 2-year-old girl. Right? It's not enough. So I said to her the other day, I was like, Mom, let me ask you a question. You're the mother, right? And she said yes. I said, don't you want your kid to be happy? Just be happy. He's happy. He's happy that I'm never going to be. He's done. He reached his goal. What's better than that? Nothing, right? Like, I'm still searching every day for something, right? Because I want it. I want change. I like change. I want things. I'm always thinking there's got to be something better, right? And I even with food, it's like, how can I say that this is signature? People always ask me, what's your signature recipe? I don't know. What's the best thing on the menu? I don't know. I don't know. I like this scallop dish, but maybe I can make it better tomorrow. That's the search. Do you know? That's the search. Somebody asked me earlier, like, to be great at something is a complicated thing. When people ask me that question, because most people don't ever think, like, okay, I'm going out there to be great. And then even fewer people go out there thinking, I want to be the best. To say that you want to be the best is like it's a commitment, like you can't believe, because you're living under a rock. Nothing else matters. Nothing, right? I mean, I lived in that world for years, you know, like decade of, it doesn't matter if it's raining, snowing, it doesn't matter who died, it doesn't matter who's getting married, I don't care. I just want to cook. Seems crazy, right? But that's how you cook for the president. That's how you win awards, that's how you get all the accolades, right? But that's the dedication that you need to have, right? That's why when you watch these people in the Olympics and they win a gold medal and they're hysterical crying, it's because of the emotion of all the years of sacrifice that they made to get to that point. It's like, yeah, they're happy. But what you can't understand is that it's the culmination of years of sacrifice. and it just all comes out. You just can't handle it. It just comes out. You can't help it. You know, that's a different. It's just different, and certain people don't need to get to that level to be happy, right? Think about the poor soul that has to be that way to be happy. It's shitty. It's not good. You know, my brother's happy, and I think that, you know, with this type of stuff, if you're able to bring people together, create a home with beautiful things in it, be able to bring the people that you love to that space, and to create memories with food as the vehicle to bring them together, what better is it? What better things can you possibly do in life? You know? Okay, so that's me. So I'm here to answer any questions that you can have about anything. I mean, food-wise. I'm a philosopher too, if you didn't know. And I minored in psychology, so I can probably help on certain levels. I can't write scripts, so don't ask. Any questions about anything?
Michael, do you have a restaurant in Vegas?
No.
Did you ever?
No. I have
Oh,
restaurants
I don't know why I
in Florida.
Florida, I know. Miami.
In Miami, but I don't have them anymore. Just here now in New York, in the state of New York. We have one in Westchester. The one in Westchester is in a town called Irvington. I don't know if you guys have been on the Hudson Valley. It's so
Is
beautiful.
it an MP Taverna
It's an
too?
MP Taverna, yeah. Really, really beautiful up there. Really beautiful. Very, very, very different feel on the river.
What is it called?
Right on the river.
MP Taverna.
Oh,
Just like
Yeah.
the one here.
It's a really, I call it Mayberry Irvington because it's like it really feels that way. Have you been there?
I've been up there, yeah, I used to go ferry picking up and right up, which is even further.
That's further on, yeah. But the thing about Irvington, there's 5 river towns, and the thing about Irvington is that it's a very affluent area, right? So like the taxes are stupid, and like it's a very expensive area. It wasn't always like that, but it's just become like one of the places to live. You know, it's just like Oyster Bay or any of these towns. You know, it's just a school district, and you know, whatever. So the thing that's different about Oyster Bay, not Oyster Bay, Irvington, is that you know, at the bar at the restaurant, you have a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and he's sitting next to a townie, and they're drinking beer together because they went to high school together. And it doesn't happen a lot in these communities, right? Like it just doesn't, you know. So you have a guy that's paying, you know, $120,000 a year in property taxes, and you have a guy that's paying $800 a month in an apartment, and they're sitting drinking beer together. It's pretty crazy, you know. It just doesn't happen a lot, and it's that town, you know. It's just the way it is in that town. You know, people are telling me it's changing, but this is what I see. You know, and I think part of the reason why it's changing up there is because a lot of people are moving from New York to the Hudson Valley. You know, it's a backwards commute from Long Island. It's very different than Long Island. Very different people, very different philosophy, and those river towns are more artsy. They're very kind of bohemian in their feel, and their attitude is a little bit different. You know, but then when you have somebody that's paying $120,000 in property taxes, they're a certain type of person.
Yeah.
You know, it's an amazing thing. There's a woman up there who's extremely wealthy people. She has 2 boys that were born with very bad handicaps, like wheelchair bound from birth. You know, the type of children that you would look and say don't look if you have a child. Like you shouldn't look at that type of person. You know what I mean? Because it's awkward, right? Like everybody, you can't help but to look at these kids. Yeah? And she's showing me pictures of them, and she comes to the bar all the time with her husband. And then she has 2 girls who are healthy, and the boys have always been, now they're in their 20s, and they're in this home. And if they didn't have the wealth that they have, there's no way that these boys would still be with us. You know, it's only because they've been able to give them the best of the best. You know, and they're showing me these places that they're in, and it's amazing. You know, it's truly amazing to me. But at the same time, it's gut wrenching because you know that they've been through so much with these 2 boys, and then they have these 2 girls, and they're so different from one another. you know, and the love that they have for these kids, I think, is also different, you know. I think it's so hard, and to listen to the stories that people have about these type of things, I think is a difficult part of humanity, you know. Like, why did these kids get born that way? You know, I think about it all the time. Anyway, food. Anybody?
I have a question. So I really enjoyed your story about with your dad
Mm-hmm.
and that Easter and that whole feeling that you saw your hands.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking that through that you got to know your dad, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, your great-great-grandfather, because those are techniques that have been passed down
Absolutely.
usually for generations.
Absolutely, yes.
So it's a connection that you have just going back generations, which is amazing.
Yep.
I would love to find out if you have, I don't know about your first cookbook, I'm gonna buy your second one, but I don't know if you have those recipes, like those really
I
traditional.
don't in that book. So
village
if you read it,
recipes.
it's the most traditional book. If you wanted to talk outside of Greek, there's a book by Dr. Edward Wright. It's called The Mediterranean Feast. He's a historical food writer. So it's a very, very, I mean, it's a hard read. Like, you have to love reading. It's a huge book, 500-600 pages, but it deals with the migrations of the whole Middle East and how they influenced one another. It has
Does it have the recipes?
very ancient recipes, original recipes.
Right.
I don't know if it's in print anymore, but it's a book that I read years ago, and I always find myself going back to it, every once in a while, because it's a very unique perspective on food and the evolution of food, because it really deals with evolution more than the actual recipe, because there's a lot of historical information in it, but it's using food history to show you how migration and conquest created food culinary-wise in different regions in that area. So like in Greece, the easiest example is Greece. Greece was occupied by Turkey for 600 years. So that occupation brought all of the spices of the Middle East into the Mediterranean, right? So if when people ask me to explain Greece, I tell them if Turkey or the Middle East and Italy had a love child, it would be Greece, right? That's what it would be, because we have all of the ingredients of the Mediterranean, which is everything that you recognized immediately, right? There's nothing in this book that you have to go to Whole Foods to get, right? It's garlic, tomato, eggplant, cucumbers. I mean, it's just basic farm vegetables. That's it, right? But then you have cinnamon and clove and nutmeg and coriander and mustard seed and everything else, and that's all coming from Turkey, right? So when you bring those together, you get Greek food, right? But most of Greek food is Turkey, like baklava is really Turkish,
Right.
Yeah.
and like a Greek won't admit that, but it's just true. Yeah. Turks make it better, yeah. Well, I love Turkey. I think Turkish food is going to be the next. It's going to be the next.
You know, my husband's Turkish.
Yeah.
We have another question on Facebook, someone asking.
Yeah.
She's asking, she made a chocolate Greek koulourakia.
Koulourakia?
Yep.
Chocolate koulourakia?
Yeah, she had
Wow.
chocolate to it, but she wants to know how to make it gluten-free so people with allergies can
I mean, it's
enjoy
just
it.
It's just a type of flour that that she needs to use. So she could just use a gluten-free flour and replace the AP flour that she probably has a recipe for
Okay.
with any kind of gluten-free flour. That's easy. Like those type of questions are fairly simple, because to make something gluten-free, which has become a pretty big thing, over the last, I'm going to say 10 years, but 5 especially, where people are just so much more educated about the things that are doing certain things to their bodies, especially their kids' bodies, so we're super highly sensitive about it, like my youngest one's in a nut-free room. So one child in the whole room has a nut allergy, the whole class is nut-free. Has to be that way.
That's how my nephew is. He
Yeah.
has to eat by himself.
Yeah, has to be that way, right? So the school just says if there's a child that has this particular allergy, the whole room is forbid to eat that thing, because kids could share and the kid could die, right? And the reality is that unfortunately that the school is probably afraid of being sued when you really think about it, right?
Yeah.
And that's why they're doing it. But then you have other parents who are just like, well, I want my kid to have a nut. Why shouldn't I have a nut? You know? Why do we have Trump as a president? I don't know. Let's be honest.
Now there's a nut.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Couldn't tell you the answer. You know.
Talk about nuts.
So it's just part of it's part of I think the process in which we get to the end with food I think is more exciting than the end, in my opinion, today. Right? It's going to the supermarket, like I love that, and picking the vegetables and getting ready for making dinner or thinking about what I'm going to make. The process, right, is very exciting. Then the end result of giving that thing is very exciting. The buzzkill is like sitting down to eat it because it's not as exciting as all the stuff leading up to that. Everything leading up to that, to me, is so exciting, And you'll find that if you start cooking, that it'll become addiction because it's going to. If you love, I'll tell you the simplest way of looking at it. If you love Christmas because you're a gift giver, then you're gonna love cooking. You're gonna love cooking, right? Yeah. So I'm a bad gift acceptor. I have to work on that. All I want to do is give. All I want to do is give. I want to give everything
Still,
away.
you're one-dimensional.
One dimensional. I am. I told you. So, what else? Any other food questions or general questions?
Silly question.
Yeah.
Why do you use vinegar in your tzatziki as opposed to lemon juice?
So I love acidity, and I love really bright acidity. There's lemon juice in the tzatziki too.
Oh, there is. Okay.
Yeah. But lemon juice acidity and vinegar acidity are very different. And you'll find if you read the cookbook that we use vinegar in everything. So to me, vinegar is not an ingredient, it's a seasoning.
Okay.
Salt, pepper, vinegar, everything.
But you
Salt,
use
pepper,
wine
vinegar.
vinegar, right? Mostly?
It depends on what we're using it for. But this particular one is a white wine vinegar.
Because it's going in the white.
White wine vinegar, yeah. Well, it tastes different than red wine vinegar. So you're gonna, if it really depends on what you're trying
It's like
to create.
vinegar light.
No, it's just a different.
No,
It's like
it's
saying
just-
red wine and white wine. It's just two different things. Right? It's really two different things, So if you were making you wouldn't use red wine on a fish sauce. You know what I'm saying? You would use white wine and garlic and butter, not red wine and garlic and butter, to put it on a fish, like a light white fish. Maybe I would use, if I was roasting turbot whole and I wanted to have a really rich mushroom sauce and I used some Pinot Noir to make that sauce, maybe possibly in that scenario. Or I was braising monkfish tail, maybe if I want a certain application I would use red wine, but it would be depending on what you're needing the end result to be. Whatever that end result is, you have to start with the ingredient and then move towards the end. But your thought is always going to be, what is the end game? What do I really want to taste when it's all done? And certain things are going to overpower other things. Sometimes you want that. So the dressing that we had on this salad was a red wine vinaigrette. It was Chianti wine. To me, it's that's the best vinaigrette for just standard salads. We always have that in the refrigerator at my house. Red wine vinaigrette. It's the best vinaigrette for just a standard salad. It's like Greek salad, red wine vinaigrette. Tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, feta, cheese, and that red wine. It just tastes good together with oregano, But if I was making a white fish salad with red onions and baby chicory, I'd probably use a white wine vinaigrette because it's smoky and light. It's the smoky light salad. It would be overpowered by the acidity of the red wine vinaigrette. Too strong, right? We want it to be bright, but we want it to be sort of like a citrusy sort of flavor profile that's happening. A lot of times when when I was younger, because I never went to school to cook, so I would think about food in more of a philosophical way. To me, it was more about flavor profiles than it was about actually creating the end dish. You know, like I never follow a recipe. I'm bad with recipes. So I always looked at it. I'd have a page, an empty page, and I would have 3 columns. And on one column, on the top, I'd write a title, and I would say, okay, I'm going to explore like anise and orange. Anise and orange would be the flavor profile I was looking for. So the first column would be, what can I use that would work with orange and fennel and anise? So I would say, okay, I could, fennel has an anise flavor, orange has an anise flavor, and I just put everything that I put down, licorice, it didn't matter, orange and fennel. And then the second column was things that I could use that were going to influence the orange and fennel in a positive way. So like cumin and orange taste good together, and sage and orange taste good together, right? And clove and orange taste good together. So I write all the herbs and stuff, and then I would say protein last. So I would say, well, duck and orange and fennel is going to taste good together. Pork and orange and fennel is going to taste good together. Red mullet or rouchet or barbunya, whatever. It's a little tiny red fish. It's going to taste good with orange and fennel. So after I had this big sheet in front of me, I said, okay, so if I make a dish that had roasted rouchet with duck sausage, it's going to work because orange and fennel is going to make it work. I know that sounds complicated, but that's how you make new food.
Your fridge is empty.
Yes. That's how you break the rules, find new things. I was very interested in that for a long time, a lot of years, thinking about it, all day. Yes.
We have a question from Facebook.
Yes.
It says, many chefs are very particular about their knives. What brand do you prefer?
So I have a lot of knives, I do. You don't have to spend a tremendous amount of money on knives. I think the knife is really more about the extension of your particular hand. Like it has to feel good in your hand. Japanese knives as an example are not something that I like because to me they're just too light. They're too light for my hand. I like a heavier knife because I started my career using Wursthof, which is German steel, very heavy knives, right? I now use like Mizoni regularly. Like just cooking every day, I use Mizoni. It's a really good knife. Probably about $200, maybe $250 for a good knife. Which sounds like a lot, but it's a good knife. It's going to last a long time if you take care of it. Forever if you take care of it. I have knives at home. That's embarrassing how much we spent to get them. It really is silly, but they're beautiful. Calf bone handles, handcrafted.
This is chef. What do
It's
you
so
want?
good. But I think that sometimes you get intimidated when you get something that's too much. You know what I mean? Like it's better to find something that you're happy with, that you're gonna want to use and that you're excited about. I always it's like, why are you gonna buy a shoe? My wife is nuts.
So crazy with shoes?
Can't explain it. So, like we have a whole closet of just shoes. Stupid, but it's her thing. You know what I mean? So, like, why are you gonna buy that shoe if you're not gonna wear it? Like wear it. If you're gonna buy that shoe, wear it and be happy that you're wearing it. Like it doesn't make sense to buy a shoe. I know more about shoes than a man should know. My wife really is crazy.
Oh my God.
She worked in the shoe industry for many years. Many years. So, you know, she's like me with food, but with shoes in the same way. So the thing is that, you know, there's no reason to go out there, or even with clothes, you know. If you're gonna buy this thing, be happy that you're buying this thing, and then wear it. And to me, it's like, you know, if you have this favorite, you know, blouse, every time you put it on, it makes you feel better about yourself, doesn't it? Somehow. That's the beauty of it, you know. So why not treat yourself to that thing if it's going to be a $5,000 knife? Every time you touch it, if it makes you happy, then it's worth it, you know. But if you're just going to sit there and be afraid of it, and it's in a box because God forbid you drop it or it gets a niche or something's wrong with it, like, you know, if you're afraid to wear the shirt because maybe you're going to spill something on it, what's the sense of buying the shirt? It's okay. You know what I mean? Anything else?
I have a question.
Yeah.
You were talking before about, for example, like the olive oil and the bad crap that's in it and stuff, some of the stuff that we buy.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of the meat and things that we buy now are just filled with junk that can really impact you. What's your suggestion? You know, we go into the store and we see something that's organic or grass-fed or this or that, but a lot of it's just marketing crap. So
no, I would say no to that. I think with the vegetables, you want to, I mean, you know, to me, you want to try and stay in that organic thing. It's more, it's not cheap to eat healthy.
Sure.
I have
What
to be
about
honest
meat,
with you.
if you have a recommendation of like, hey, this is the real stuff that you should be buying.
So like chicken breast, chicken, we use Amish chicken from Pennsylvania, you know, at the restaurant. But Bell & Evans, which is a brand that you'll find in a lot of supermarkets today, it's great.
Sure.
And I tell you, like, if you take Purdue and you put Bell & Evans next to it, one looks orange and one looks white, right? White is Bell & Evans. And then if you cook the meat and you taste them side by side, one is so soft and delicate, and the other one is chewy and stringy.
Sure.
You know, it really is a big difference. But with me, so like this is a big deal. So it's really, really hard. Most people overcook things at the house, and that's the biggest problem that you have as a home cook, is that you take things too far. Fish and chicken and pork are really the big ones, though. Chicken in particular, because everybody eats a lot of chicken today. If you cook a chicken, like grilling a chicken, right? The next time you cook a chicken breast, take a piece of chicken, season it with salt and pepper, put it on the grill. Take one off when it's medium temperature, right? It's not cooked all the way yet. And put it to the side and just let it sit there. And then finish cooking the chicken that you had, the other piece of chicken, the way you normally would cook it, right? And then take that one off, right? And then take the other one that now is cold because it's been sitting there for 5 minutes, and put it back on the grill for just 30 seconds on each side, right? And then taste it and see what difference it's going to be. Because it needs to rest, and what happens is this: cooking continues. So if you're cooking something to the perfect doneness, what's going to end up happening is that, and this is very obvious with steak, if you take the steak right off of the grill and you put it on a plate and you run to the table so you can sit down and eat it hot, when you cut into the steak, it bleeds all over the place, right? So what happens when it's bleeding is that the steak is reacting violently to the heat. It's very aggressive. So you put this protein on the fire, and all the, I'm going to just say juices so that we know what we're talking about, it runs away from the heat, okay? So if you take a piece of steak and you do it really quickly and you cut it, you'll see that there's like a bullseye in the middle. It's really gray on the outside, and then it's red and raw in the middle, right? Because everything is moving towards the middle really quickly. It's not because it's cooked. It's because it just ran away from the heat. If you let that same piece of meat rest for 5-10 minutes and you cut it, it's not going to have that gray ring. It's going to go away because everything is going to go back out. That's what resting does, right? So everything that moves away from the heat goes back to where it's supposed to go when it's rested, right? And then when it cuts, it doesn't bleed, because when it moves away from where it's supposed to be, it's too full. It has nowhere to sit. So you cut it and it goes away onto the plate. But when it goes back to where it needs to be, now it's perfect. And when you cut it, flavor stays in there, right? The same thing is true with chicken or fish. Everything should take off, rest, let it go back out to the outside, all the juices, and then leave the grill on or the oven on. Throw it in there for just a few seconds just to get hot. Because inside it stays hot, the outside just gets cold. You understand? It'll make a big difference.
Sure.
But the ingredient, and this is what I was saying earlier, the ingredient is everything in food, especially this style of food, because it's not camouflaged by anything. There's Asian food, let's say as an example, is sauce driven. Like all of the sauce on there, the thing that you're eating is less important because you're tasting all the sauce, So like I love. The other day I made Mexican food for the guys in the kitchen. So I made mole, right? I mean, nobody ever taught me how to make mole. It's just I figured it out. So I make this mole. It's delicious, and we made pork with it, and it came out really delicious, And the thing about it is that the mole, the flavor of the mole, it doesn't matter. Like I don't have to use Berkshire like pork to make that dish shine, because the mole is the star of the show on this thing. It's just so delicious, And to me, that's that style of cooking. Indian food has that same, if you're making this delicious curry, it's just the curry is so delicious. It doesn't have to, and that the thing about these cuisines is that they're so poor. They don't have a lot, so they're just using the worst part of the animal, and they're throwing it in a braise, and they're putting curry, and they're putting moles, and they're making this delicious food. It's amazing. It's amazing to me. But if you're gonna have a grilled pork chop, and I get you, like this really beautiful marble carabuta pork, and it's like I cook it for you perfectly. When you eat it, it's just wow. By itself, you don't need anything on it. I would put lemon on it, but I love that. So I just want acid. So acid is like think about you like, let's say the simplest way is maybe an example. So you're eating a very rich thing like a fettuccine alfredo. So when you eat that pasta, or like carbonara, let's say carbonara, right? So it's like egg that's cracked at the end, right? In like with guanciale. So you're cooking fat out, and then you're adding some kind of liquid to it to deglaze the fat, so the fat goes into the sauce, and then you're taking the yolk and you're dropping it into it with the pasta, and it thicks the sauce up, right? It thickens the sauce up. It's very rich, obviously, all fat. Not super helpful for you, let's be honest, but it tastes very good. So the thing is that dish, it tastes so great. You eat one bite, you want to eat another bite. By the time you get to the 6th, 7th, 8th bite, it starts to get a little heavy, and your palate is fatigued. Right? Like you're sitting back on the chair and you're taking deep breaths, you're starting to full, And if you take that same dish and before you plate it, you just squeeze fresh lemon juice in it, right? All of a sudden, what's going to happen when you eat it, you're going to get that porky guanciale, right? And then the fat from the egg. But then there's going to be this brightness of acidity that comes in the end, and it's going to wash the fat away, right? So now your palate is clean. You're going to go and eat that same thing again. You're going to have that roller coaster ride, right? So it's like one is just driving on the interstate with corn on both sides for miles and miles, or days, years of not seeing the same thing over and over again. The other one is like you have to pay attention because it's windy and curvy, and things are going to happen, so you need to be alert, right? And then if you take that same dish after you squeeze the lemon and you chop up some mint or some sweet herb like basil or whatever it is, and you throw it right in the end. So you squeeze lemon, throw fresh basil or fresh mint right in the end, and then you toss in the plate and you eat. Now all of a sudden you're going to have full flavored fat, porky, fatty, brightness, from the acidity, and then spring. Like spring, fresh herbs, spring, you know, and that's all happening in like seconds. You know, think about one bite and how long that one bite is. You know, maybe 6 seconds. You're chewing for 6 seconds and you swallow it, but you're experiencing that flavor profile like that. You know, it's not that complicated food when you think about it, because what we experience on the palate is something that you can control, right? So sweet, salty, right? Acid are all things that you can control, right? So you're experiencing them different times, and because of your tongue is recepting them at different times. So when you start to put it like that, it makes a lot of sense. So if you go home and you eat a piece of watermelon, sweet, it's delicious. If you put feta cheese on it, it's sweet and salty. It's really delicious, right? And it's so simple, okay? So if you put a piece of raw tuna with watermelon and feta, it changes a lot. And all of a sudden, you just made something that is so simple, but really, really, really elegant and very complicated all at the same time, right? Palate, very complicated, not to make. Right? It's just raw tuna, watermelon, and feta. If you add mint, raw tuna, watermelon, and feta, mint. Right? If you add cracked black pepper, sea salt, and olive oil, you know, it's almost like you're making like a poke style Mediterranean version of poke. Right? So, you know, to me, it's really about understanding how you're developing those flavors that you're excited about. That's why I had that page and I said anise and orange, you know. To me that was special. But the other way of developing food is to take something that you know. I have an affinity for Italian food, like I love Italian food. The first food that I cooked was Italian food. And still to this day, I love Italian food. I love Italian food. I think there's a lot more freedom in Italian food because it has so many beautiful ingredients. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Greek food, but I really, really think Italian food is one of the best cuisines in the world, if not the best. But, you know, with Italian food, I think what you have is the opportunity to take this traditional thing that they've done for, you know, centuries, and then just make it yours by twisting a few things, you know? And when I was doing that, when I was cooking Italian food and I was doing that, people were like really shocked by it, because to break a boundary or change something that has generations of time committed to it, to perfect it, is sometimes a sacrilegious thing to do. It's sort of like you're breaking a rule and you don't really want to do that. But sometimes there is a playfulness to something, and that playfulness happens here. It's cerebral. Like serious food is not just palate driven. It's asking you to think, you know? And that to me is where it becomes complicated for most people, because we want things to taste good. I remember I took my wife to a restaurant in Chicago called Alinea. And Alinea is a molecular gastronomy restaurant. And the chef is a very famous chef. And I remember I had been there once before, and we were traveling in Chicago, and I said, you know, to my wife, like, let's go and try this restaurant. So we're there like 4 hours. You know, it's like, I don't know how many courses. Like, they just kept sending out food. It just got to the point where it was 40 courses maybe. But they're bites, one little bite, you know. But very esoteric and like very avant-garde food. You know, if you Google the restaurant and you go to YouTube and you see the type of food it is, it's shocking, really, 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 really far out there. And he made this dish where it was a rabbit roulade, like a roll of rabbit roulade, and it was this little tiny, one bite, like this little tiny thing. Everything's perfect, and it's sitting on this beautiful plate, and it's closed, covered with a glass, and he put smoke into the glass, right? And it's just the smoke is swirling around the glass, and then the waiter brings the plate, puts it in front of you, pulls the glass off so there's a plume of smoke that comes off, and then puts the glass down on the table and pours rabbit consomme into the glass that was just cloching all this smoke. And then you ate it, and it was just amazing. Right? And in that same meal, he had a hamachi, a yellowtail, that had peanut butter and jelly in it. It wasn't really peanut butter and jelly, but it was like freeze-dried and all this stuff that they had to it, you know? And that, to me, tasted horrible. Like, I couldn't eat it, it was bad, right? But the rabbit was just, like, so special. So 40 courses. I said to my wife, what do you think? She said, this is the worst restaurant you've ever been to. You know? And I said to her, okay. I said, if you could pick like 6 or 7 things and make just one meal out of those things, would you say the same thing? She said, it might be one of the best restaurants I ever had. But now you're saying to me that it's okay to have 33 mistakes for 7 things that are great. And I said, well, here's a guy that's pushing the envelope so far. He's asking you to do things that you would have never done before, to try something that is so out there and so different in the way that he's presenting it. And when you get the plates, they're just so perfect. Like, it's so much work and so much time. So maybe me, I'm looking at it a little bit different than her, because I'm thinking the amount of dedication and time that it takes to make this is just unbelievable. You know, the focus of it is just it's incredible. So to me, it was like really a meal that I thought was so exciting, right? And I wouldn't say that I would go back there more than 2 or 3 times in my life, because you don't need to, you know? But it really did create a lasting memory, you know? And I could tell you each one of those courses, right? But I could also tell you when we went to Monteflonico for our honeymoon, we were in Italy for about a month. And we went to this town in Monteflonico, and we went to this bed and breakfast called La Chiusa. And you're at the top of the mountain. There's a valley below. It was a stable that they converted into a bed and breakfast. It was a 2-star Michelin bed and breakfast. And you're, you know, like sitting in a jacuzzi, and you're opening the horse doors, and the moon is right there, and there's a fireplace that they lit for you, and the goats and everything is running around in the valley below. It's not a bad place to be for your honeymoon. And then you're going to eat, right? So I'm super excited. 2-star Michelin. I don't know if you know Michelin or not, but it's a rating system. 3 is the highest. So very hard to get Michelin. It's really, really a big honor. 3 is really just staggering. So the 2 is, it's ridiculous, it really is. So we're sitting down, it's 2-star Michelin, we order the food, and the first course that they bring out is a gift from the chef, and it's tomato bruschetta, right? So I'm looking at my wife, and I'm like, they gave us fucking tomato bruschetta. They said 2-star Michelin. It's a piece of bread with tomato on it. It's like, you know, $2,000 a person to eat, right? I'm thinking, it's like a piece of tomato. It's just bread with tomato. Are you kidding me? Like, and then I ate it. And I was like, shit, I felt like I was swimming in an ocean of tomato. It was like defining what tomato was. It was one bite, you know? So we had this meal that's just extraordinary. Very simple, very, very, very rustic, and like just exquisite wine, exquisite meal. At the end of the meal, they did 8 covers the whole night. Right? I don't know if you've been to these type of restaurants. It's like, you know, they lived there, they worked there. The father was in the front. It was a woman chef. The mom was in the kitchen. The father was in the front. The daughter was at the concierge desk. Like, this is how it was. And they had maybe 8 rooms. And the whole restaurant was maybe, you know, 10 tables. And that night, 3 of them were booked. But the whole night was, you're staying there the whole night, right? So she's done, the chef is done, her name is Dania, she's done, and she comes out to say hello to the guests. And she's in full gown. You're in Italy. She's in full gown. Yeah, she just finished service. She went, got changed, showered, full gown, and now she's singing opera.
Oh.
And you're like, what is going on here? But I remember eating the tomato and thinking, now I understand. Now I know what food is supposed to be, right? And that couldn't be more different than Alinea and what he's doing over there. But still, two different worlds of approaching food, and two different ways of thinking about food. Both of them to me very, very exciting, And I remember also like cooking for people who, like I don't know if you've ever heard of Alain Ducasse. Alain Ducasse, a famous chef, multiple stars, right? At one point, he had the most Michelin stars out of everybody in the world. And he came to my restaurant to eat, right? So I was the first Greek chef to get a Michelin star. He came to the restaurant, so now it's like, God is eating at my restaurant, and I'm cooking for God. And so like I'm cooking, and I'm not wondering. I'm watching. I'm like looking at the kitchen like this. I don't want to really go to the table. I'm trying to figure out. I'm like, I'm asking the question. So like the man like, is he eating the food? And like I'm watching the plates come back into the kitchen, make sure everything, like every drop on that plate is eaten. And like I remember watching him take his glasses off and put his face like. And he's looking at the food and he's like picking it, but not he's picking apart. He's just like trying to understand it, and then he's eating it. And the whole thing to me was one of the most memorable things, like seconds of time in my life, because here was a guy who had achieved this greatness, and I was just a kid, and he was eating my restaurant. Right? Great time, great memories, and all of this stuff now, and then it goes back to this gift thing, you know what I mean? So like that's the change of and the evolution of time. I think as a young person I needed something, and as an adult I needed something else, and I'm sure 10 years from now I'm gonna need something else. It just changes. It's part of life,
Well, what's frustrating though is you could give two people the same ingredients, tell them to cook it the same exact way, and ones will come out okay, the ones will be great. Like my father passed away, he was in the diner business. My mom cooks, and I think she has the best food.
Yeah.
So how do I emulate that where like she'll tell me how to cook it, but it won't come out as hers?
No, I'll tell you, there's so like sometimes people would ask over the years, like being interviewed by all these different people, writers, other chefs, just people like in the culinary industry, and they would ask me, how did you come up with this thing, or how do you do this? And a lot of times I would say, look, I'm cooking in memory. I'm trying to cook in memory. Right? I'm trying to say that if you went to Crete like I did when I was a kid, and you went into the ocean like I did when I was a kid with a knife, and you dove down and you scraped a sea urchin off of a rock like I did, and you brought it to the beach like I did, and you cracked it on another rock, and you rinsed it in the ocean, and you squeezed lemon juice on it, and you ate it, right? Then you would know what that experience is. Only if you did that, then you would know, right? But I can cook something that's going to bring you right there, and the guy who did that is going to take a bite and sit back on his chair and say, I just went back to Crete, right? I can do that, right? And the guy who didn't won't have the same experience. He's either going to like it or he's not going to like it, right? And I remember in my first restaurant, there was a reviewer, her name was Diane Kochilas. She's a cookbook writer also, probably for sure the most prolific Greek cookbook writer. She's got more cookbooks than anybody else, and they're great. She's great. And she was writing reviews for a newspaper in Athens. I opened up a restaurant here in New York, and they sent her from Athens to review the restaurant in New York because we were so far ahead of everything that they were margherita soup, which is a soup that you make during Easter time, that's made with organs, right? So my father's from the island of Crete, and they would make this soup. It's a tripe soup, right? They would make this soup with gardunya, which are like, it sounds disgusting. It's the stomach stuffed with kidneys and spleen and liver, and then they take small intestine and they wrap it, right, into these little pockets, and then they braise that and they make a soup out of it. And in Crete, they make it with lemon egg called avolemon. And in Kalamata, where my mother's from, they make it with tomato. So my mother would make it with avolemon on it. And what I did was I made a chilled version of this. So it was very technical because you had to cook everything separately, perfectly, and then it was chilled, and then we made avolemon, which is like this egg whites whipped with lemon juice, and then slowly you poured liquid into it, and we made this foam, and there was just this little drop of foam that was sitting on top and had other things in it. If you ate margherita from Crete and you ate this thing, you would say, holy cow, this is margherita, but it's cold, right? So if you were Greek, you either said this is not Greek food, or you said I was a genius. There was no in between, right? You either hated it, or you said this is like ridiculous. Like, how do you think of this, right? And she took a bite and had the same reaction that Dukan had. She just sat back on the chair and was just like perplexed. And I went out and I said, what do you think? She goes, this tastes like margherita. I said, I know. I said, it's a play on margherita. Everything that's in margherita is in this, but it's cold. It's a salad. And she said, this tastes like margherita. And I was like, I know, this is what I made. It's what it's supposed to be. So confused, right? Because centuries of tradition, and now somebody said, this Greek American, right, is saying, no, it doesn't have to be done this way, you can do it this way. To them it was good and bad, you know? And that's been my life, you know? And I'm comfortable with it. It's okay, you know? There are so many Greeks that have come to my restaurants who didn't like the food. It's okay, you know? And there are others that came and said, it's a genius. It's okay. And so the reason why I'm telling you this story is because, number one, it's very, very hard, right, to make food like your mother, because that's the food that you ate. And I always tell people the hardest thing to do is to compete with somebody's mother who was a housewife, because if she made meatballs, that's the meatball you know and love. If I make meatballs, it's the meatball that I know. If you tell me that my meatballs are better than your mother's meatballs, that I don't know if I can get higher praise. You know? There's just no higher praise. You know? If you're telling me your mother's meatballs are better than mine, I'm saying, of course they are. You know, like, because that's what you ate your whole life, right? It's not even about the taste; it's about the memory of those things. You know, and that's the truth. The second part to that is that there are just some people that know. It's not about understanding the recipe. You're 100% right. I can give the same recipe with the same exact ingredients, measured the same exact way, to 17,000 people, and you're going to get 17,000 dishes, right? But some of those 17,000 are just going to know, right? They're just going to know when it's ready. They're just going to know how much to add. They're just going to know. Right? So, I'm one of those guys.
Through trial and error.
I just know. So the thing is this, like, somebody puts something in front of me that I've never seen before. I don't know why, but I just know how to cook it. I don't know why. When something is ready, it's not I'm touching it, poking it, jabbing it with a thermometer. I don't do that. It's just ready, right? The guy would say, like, is it ready? No. You know it's not ready because it's not ready, but you didn't even look at it. It's not ready yet. Just leave it in there. I'll tell you when it's ready. Right? I don't know why that's true. I can't tell you the answer to that question. It just is.
Thank you.
Anything else? right, thank you very much, everybody. Oh, the books.
Yeah, the books.
And we're selling the books tonight if anybody is interested. We can only do cash only, but if you'd like the autograph books.
I know where you live. I know where you're going.
It's cash only.
I know. Chef, can you just give a thank you and bye?
Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. It's great being here. We love Ashley.